Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here for another forecast. We're going to check out the activities for today. So we got a little bit of things to talk about as this is already moving into Florida. We already got some severe kind of potential going on today. We got a couple of warnings here for flood warnings and things like that. We got a warm front that's lifting, increasing the dew points, the temperatures, and so that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about. This storm that's moving into this area, going into parts of Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, some of this storm could have line segments with the storm, which could be a multifaceted system for supercell development, where you can get these line segments, supercells develop along that line, and therefore out of that we could have a couple of tornadoes, damaging wind profiles, things like that. We're already looking at wind shear that is going to be more than supportive to get things rolling up and get things rotating, as well as the damaging wind threat. It doesn't look like much for hail, but it does look like some torrential rainfall. You can see this line of just lightning. It just looks like, you know what I mean, just line of lightning that's coming out along this cold front. There's probably more to this than this. I might just not be able to see it because the radar's not picking it up that far out into the Gulf, but this is lifting up into the Gulf, and once I play it, you can kind of see the track on that as it's moving, and it's curving to the northeast, moving northeast into Florida, and then along the Atlantic coast up towards Savannah, Charleston, going up South Carolina, North Carolina, and that area here. So we're going to take a look at some of the data and see what we're seeing right now. Let me turn these winds off so we can kind of see what is currently going on, since the winds are pretty bad along the coast right now. So we already have gale warnings and marine warnings out, so this is definitely not a day, obviously, to be on the water. Even with the temperatures, it might feel kind of warm and nice out there, but along the coast, this is probably not the best place to be. You're going to get some high surf, some really rough waves out there. Got wind profiles out here that are pretty staggering. Got a cold front that's going through with this warm front ahead of it. And anytime that you get these pinching systems where, you know, the cold front's moving in behind the warm front, and you got this little area that's just kind of pinched in between these two fronts right here. You got some outflow boundary wind shear profiles that are just going to be really, really rough, especially out in the seas, and that can make the conditions out here very, very unfavorable. All right, so that means you're getting this, you know, kind of wet, you know, strong, warm air mass that's going into this area, and that's destabilizing the atmosphere, and it's just, you know, it's making it an unstable environment. So that's why today the primary threats throughout this convection outlook, is going to be damaging winds and a few tornadoes. That's really the primary worry for today. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at some of the data here, see what we're looking at. This is the tornado probabilities for today. So all of this area right here is, this is just for tornadoes. Alright, so let's take a look at the current data that we got going on right now. There's a low pressure system that's moving into Tennessee, Kentucky area right here, dragging these fronts along as it kind of moves in. Our temperatures, not too warm, but down in Florida, look at this. We got 76, 61. It's nice and warm down there. Alright, so ahead of that, let's look at the dew points. We're already getting dew points over the 70s here in Florida. 67 in far western Florida, kind of lower Alabama, that kind of area. We're getting some higher dew points there. That wet sector is just kind of blowing in. Even in Georgia, where we're getting these 50s or 40s here in South Carolina, this might shift to the east a little bit further, might expand that wet sector a little bit, and so that's going to further unstable and make that atmosphere there unstable. All right, now our Cape levels are not really that bad, but you can see these big numbers of you know, a couple thousand in Cape here moving into this area of Florida, where we have a little bit more of that instability going on. That's that unstable air mass that's pinched in between those two fronts right there, like I was talking about. This is going to be lifting probably and moving to the east into this area. It might spike a little bit going through just kind of like this corner right here of Georgia up into South Carolina and North Carolina. So that instability could expand. We'll have to see how it works throughout the day, but you can definitely plan on some unstable atmosphere in these areas here where a couple of those tornadoes might occur here. So our wind shear, we're looking at 50 to 70 knot wind shear today. So definitely the wind profiles are supportive for rotating supercells. Definitely some damaging wind profiles. We have enough wind shear here to really get things ramping up. Alright, so surface vortice is a part of that unstable air mass that's kind of hanging over the Gulf of Mexico right now. It pinched in between those two fronts as they're kind of coming through. Alright, so everything's going on in between those two fronts. So once that warm front lifts, then everything behind it, that's where you're getting that instability is at, you know, where you can see this here, that warm front's going to lift with these storms ahead of it, but in between here you're going to get some more development, and as this lifts in between these two fronts, that's where you're going to get that unstable air mass right there, where it's going to be nice and warm back here. If we look at the temperatures, let's try to check out the temperatures here. Really? Come on. And it won't tell me what is behind the front as far as the temperatures, but you can see these temperatures already. Look, 83 in some places, 78. We're getting nice warm temperatures down here. You know what I mean? Even though that's kind of good for the time of year, you know, because nobody likes to be cold, but this is not going to help weather situations, because it's just going to make it a little bit more unstable. Yeah, I mean, 77. Look at that, 77 right on the coast back here, where you're getting those high wind profiles. Probably a lot of rain in this area as well. Temperatures are still warm. You know, so and this storm is taking off to the northeast at 45 miles an hour. So those temperatures are not going to help, not going to help stability in the atmosphere at this point. So, all right, supercell composite is starting to lift, but it's starting to move into Florida here. You can see it kind of centralized over Tallahassee there, where you're getting that and over that unstable air mass, where that supercell development is a lot stronger. Alright, tornado parameter, we are getting a measurement of 1 over that unstable air mass. So as this warm front lifts, that is going to kind of bring it with it, you know, and throughout the day you're going to see early on in the period through midday that this is all going to just kind of move in with that warm front behind it. You'll start to see those cells building up. I wouldn't worry so much about the rain and things like that that are attributed ahead of this, but it's later on after this that's what I would be worried about, where you're starting to get this here and these line segments are starting to develop and kind of pop up throughout the period. Alright, so alright, so it's already got a little bit of helicity here, so it's definitely packing a punch already, which is probably that line of lightning that you're seeing here, and that's going to show that instability in that, where it's just kind of ramping up a little bit and it's gaining strength as it moves into this hot, wet sector, and especially behind the warm front as it lifts through these coastal states. Alright, so it's kind of packing a punch here. Lifting heights are not going to be, you're going to look at about, what, 500 millibar lifting heights here, you know, so not very stable for that environment as far as the lifting condensation heights. So, alright, so this is that tornado probability here. You get that 2% marginal risk around this, that 5% risk in northern Florida, going up through parts, just the very, very kind of far eastern part of Georgia, going up through South Carolina, Charleston, and eastern North Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. These are those areas that are going to be, you know, very prominent for some tornado development that could be possible throughout the day. The wind profiles, as this kind of blows in, you're getting damaging wind all across this. Damaging wind is possible even without the tornadoes today. If there is going to be any tornadoes, we're going to take a look at that data in here in a minute. But that's that wind profile that's going to be significant. You know, you could have some damaging winds even without a tornado today. So definitely strap down your belongings, take care of your family, you know what I mean, make sure they're out of the way of any debris and damage that might be able to occur today. Hail profiles are very low. You still could have a couple of spots of hail periodically, maybe the size of a penny or a dime, you know what I mean, at the very most, but they are very low levels of hail possibility for today. Alright, so let's take a look at a model here and see what we're looking at as far as today's possibilities. We'll look at the high resolution model and complex reflectivity here. Alright, so there is that storm that is currently right there. Oh, let me go to the regional so we can get a little bit closer of a look here. Alright, so this is basically going to cover all of that convection outlook because we do have that far eastern, southeastern kind of section of North Carolina, so this is a good thing. Alright, so let's take a look at what we got. Okay, so I went one frame. Now you can start to see these isolated cells popping up. And that's probably where we're getting a lot of that lightning, is out of this development right here. So lightning is attributed all with this, and pretty much all of this right here. And that is mostly because it's still over the ocean. Excuse me. I don't know how this lightning is going to contribute once it gets over land and it gets, you know, further inland. That lightning might die down a little bit, or it might stay the same. So you definitely have a lightning threat today. So be on your guard for lightning safety, because you could have some of that positively charged cloud to ground lightning, and it could be some danger to that, you know, with power outages. Could have some trees getting hit, could have, you know, all kinds of problems, because lightning just kind of just furthers that threat. Alright, so these isolated cells here, but with that wind shear profiles that we got going on, that warm heat advection that's going into this area, any of these cells could get spinning up and become supercells rather easily. Alright, so, and as this kind of continues on, let's see how it continues on into Florida here. Alright. And then it looks like it's going to be shaping into a line segment. So yeah, now you're getting that line segment kind of thing here. So damaging wind is going to be definitely a part of this. It shouldn't be as unstable after this all passes, but I mean, even in the northern part here where you're getting a little bit of isolated cell building here, I mean, even that could be kind of a problem. See, we're not getting too much threat or anything to really worry about behind the line of storms. It's ahead of it that we got to worry about here. So let's take a look just ahead of the line where you're getting the marginal tornado risk. You're getting pretty decent wind down here, except for maybe right there on the ground level. It starts to die down a little bit, but you just go up a little bit, we got a nice wind shear. Alright, so lifting condensation height is pretty low. Got a break in the caps. Not a whole lot of heat, but we do have some moisture that's going up in there, and that's those 70 dew points that are going on. Hydrograph looks okay. Not incredibly strong, but you know, it doesn't look too bad. You got a little bit of a hooking in here. It's going to be that critical angle with the rest of the storm structure. Alright, so, and that line segment, it looks like most of this is going to stay out to the sea, which is good if it stays out there. It'll kind of limit some of that potential today for some bad storms to kick up. Later on in the day, look, what frame are we looking at right now? We're looking at 16Z today, as this is kind of passing through Florida, where you're getting this cell building here. You're getting this line segment that's going across Florida right here, and a little bit higher on the tornado threat as well as far as that. We're getting 2500 in Cape, pretty good instability. Got some supercell development, not staggeringly high development of supercells, but it doesn't really need to be. You know, and I mean, one or two could definitely drop some tornadoes for today. Hydrograph actually looks good. Got a nice hooking system there. Got a nice little storm structure kind of forming and building there. It does have a critical angle there. Got wind profiles that are pretty sufficient. Got some nice decent wind, a little bit of a curving segment to that. Got a break in the caps right there. Got a little increased moisture that's going up into the atmosphere as well, and a little bit of increase in that heat. And that is those higher temperatures that we're having in southern Florida. Those temperatures are going to make it a little bit more unstable. It's going to aid that instability as it continues on. So then once this blows through, then you're getting this isolated cell buildup. Let's look up here in eastern South Carolina and see what the atmosphere looks like up there. Not getting too much threat. Got some disturbances in the wind field here. where it's not really organized. So that's going to be a good thing for your tornado possibilities, because it's going to lower them pretty significantly. Nice break in the cap there. And heat and moisture is kind of tight. It's very narrow because it's still kind of cool up there, so I think that's going to help your instability issues up there, and the colder temperatures maybe. Alright, so looking ahead of this frame, that tornado threat does go down, but it is still there. Got a nice storm structure here on this hydrograph. Got higher wind that's down at the surface, so we do have some really sufficient wind down here, breaking the caps. Got heat and moisture. Cape is looking at still over 2,000, 2,114. Supercell development isn't massively high, but it is there. You know what I mean? It's not zero. That's definitely sure. All right. And then it seems like it kind of splits, and then we have this other development that's just kind of splitting off of it. So let's look right in the middle of that. There is a tornado threat there, but it isn't very high. This is a low end tornado threat. So there could be a couple of, maybe a little bit of training systems that are just kind of training off the first line. That could be a possibility in here if you do have tornadoes out of the second line here. I think they're going to be relatively on the low end. You might not get any tornadoes out of it at all, but I think that they're going to be relatively small and short-lived if they're on this second line. That's the way that it kind of looks, because I think that this line right here is taking most of that helicity. Alright, so I don't think that it's going to be really staggering out of that second line, but as we look at this next frame, getting a little bit of a reduction in the tornado threat, but we're still getting over 1,000 in Cape, a nice break in the caps, and an increase in moisture, little increase in heat, not too much though. The heat is really going to be there all day just because of the warm temperatures you automatically have in Florida right now, but that moisture is really going to be picking up, it seems like. Hydrograph looks okay. Not great, but okay. And then down here in the further southern Florida, where we're looking, we're getting a little bit of isolated cells. A little nice boost in moisture there. But it doesn't look like it's promising for a tornado threat as far as that is concerned. The rest of this, you do have some little bit of isolated cells popping up here in northern Alabama, but I don't think that there's going to be anything that's real severe with that. That's that really nasty wet sector that's going on up there. And then now we're starting to see a little bit of these straight line bowing systems that are going through Florida. These are going to bring you high winds. These are definitely going to bring you some really high and possibly damaging winds ahead of this nice straight line that you got right here. That is going to be a problem as this is rolling through. It says marginal severe, so you're getting a little bit of that lesser threat, but look at the wind. You definitely have some pretty nice wind shear down here. So those wind speeds are going to be really on the rise once this line of storms comes across, and you're going to have those yeah, see, it kind of forms that nice straight line, and then you can see this dotted system of cells building right here, and that could be that supercell development where anywhere along this line right here you could have supercells popping up. Any one of these little red dots right here with the wind shear profiles, you could have a mixture in that wind, that heat advection in this area, nice hot and moist temperatures down here, and that can, with that wind that's going through there, that can really get these things spinning up. You could have supercells developing all along this line. So just ahead of this line, let's take a look at what the atmosphere is doing. Still says marginal severe. You're still getting over 1,000 in Cape though, so it wouldn't really take that much to drop, you know what I mean, a brief tornado here or there. And you can't rule that out. I don't see a high possibility out of this that tornadoes will develop, but it isn't zero, so you could have some development out of this. Alright, and then we still got some cells popping up and things like that. We're going to look right on this line here. Do have a tornado threat with this as well, so it kind of increases and decreases and increases throughout the day. Getting over 2,000 in Cape in this place right here, where right along that line of storms. Nice break in the cap, an increase in moisture in here. The heat stays about the same. There's not really much change with that, but you got a lot of moisture that's in the air as well. And then the hail development, what I was talking about. I know that on that outlook that we looked at, it said less than 5% all areas, but I did mention to you that in some areas you could have periodical hail in some isolated areas. And I mean, this is, significant hail. This is saying 250, you know what I mean? That's, 2.5 inches in diameter. I think that's on the extreme end. I don't think it's going to be that bad, you know what I mean? Inch, 3/4 in diameter. I think it's going to be probably at the biggest. If I had to guess and make an educated guess, I'd say it's probably going to be closer to about a 1/2 inch. You know what I mean? Maybe at the most. I wouldn't say that it's going to get this big, but I think that honestly, I think it's going to be more like pennies and dimes, if we do have a hail threat out of this today. If not, and you get some of that bigger hail, that would be more significant with some tornadic storms, even though the two are not connected. If you get some of that greenage today, that's because of that hail, and that greenage is always attributed to hail, not tornadoes. But a lot of supercells and mesocyclones that do drop tornadoes also drop hail. So we're going to have to be mindful of that. It's a lot of threat going through the day today, kind of on and off. So it's one of those weather aware days, just to make sure that you know what's going on in your area. So same thing. I mean, it's pretty significant, consistent throughout the day. Where you're just getting a nice wind profile down in Florida, a nice break in the caps, a lot of moisture up into the atmosphere, an unstable atmosphere where you're getting cave levels and over 1,600 pretty much throughout this entire sector. Alright, so this is one of those weather aware days. Listen to your local weather stations, pay attention to your alerts and your warnings, and make sure that you have a plan in place, because look, this continues on through the day until it pushes off to the Atlantic. You know what I mean? Nice break in the caps. That increase. There's actually an increase in heat because of these lower temperatures that are way down in South Florida, where you're getting those warmer temperatures up into the 80s at some points. Then you get seeing that increase in heat and that increase in moisture that's right on the tip there. And you have a lot of wind profiles, a lot of nice wind shear that's down there on the ground. LCL is very, very low, so that instability is really thickening at this point. And you got over 2,000 in Cape right here. Alright, so there's an unstable air mass right there in lower Florida as it's coming through, and this nice thin line of storms, these isolated cells kind of popping through. Then we definitely do have a tornado threat with this, and then this line just continues. It just continues through southern Florida like this. I think the threat will diminish throughout the day as it gets this low. These are low-end tornado threats. We do have some significant supercell development, though. That's what it says here. Almost 2,000 in Cape. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's going to be this significant, but supercells are going to develop along these lines of storms. So that is definitely a threat when we're talking about tornadoes, because any of these supercells can develop tornadoes throughout the day. Okay, now in this period from about here, we're looking about 20Z right now on the 28th, which is today. Then you start to see this kind of stuff building up here in South Carolina. We're going to look at the northern end of this storm now and take a look at what's going on up there. So right now, it doesn't look that bad. It looks like a lot of spotty rain. That's what it looks like to me right now. But let's see what kind of atmosphere we're getting up here. And that moisture is really, really rising up there. I'm getting a little bit of boost in heat. And it looks like you see that curvature that's going on in the wind, in this wind field right here. And that curve is good for your surface vorticity in these areas. But the wind looks really, really disorganized on the ground here. And that's a good thing, because it just means that nothing can really get ramped up that way. You know what I mean? When you're getting that disorganized wind field. But look what happens here. These cells start to strengthen, and then they start to build into this, kind of, isolated dashing kind of system here. So we're gonna go. We went 2 frames. Big increase in moisture, it looks like. And the wind, even though there is a little bit of disturbance here on the surface, you're getting that nice curvature, and the wind field is actually seems like it's organizing a little bit, and it seems like it's straightening out. So you got a nice, a sufficient amount of wind shear that's in this area here. Then we get a little bit of curving A little bit of hooking in that, nice storm structure, but not impressive yet. It looks like it's getting there, or at least it's trying. So we're gonna look in. Let's look just ahead of this line of storms as it's coming in. I'm going into the far eastern South Carolina, and yeah, a little bit of meshing there with the wind field. A little bit of instability still. LCL is still pretty. It's low, but it's not as low as I've seen before. Yeah, a nice wind barb here, but not much instability actually. It just looks like a bunch of rainstorms. But then you start to get these little cells popping up. Let's take a look at what's going on there. Yeah, not much as far as the severe potential. However, these storms going through this area in South Carolina and North Carolina, they could have some lightning attributed with this as well. Rumbles of thunder and lightning. Definitely be on your lightning safety in case there is some cloud to ground lightning with this. Don't know if there's going to be, but you'd rather be safe than sorry, right? Alright, so continuing on as this kind of pushes out of Florida here. So this southern tail is going to be pushing out of Florida, out of southern Florida, and this is going to be pushing now up into North Carolina. Now North Carolina doesn't look like much for the instability there as well. Let's take a look at the next frame as it continues along here. Then you start to have a little bit of cell building, but not much in the way of severe. It doesn't look like much in the way of atmospheric instability. It just it's going to look like general thunderstorms to me. All right, these got some cell building off the coast, but it's going to be moving out away from the coast. I mean, but I don't think that it's going to be really that bad in these northern states because the temperature is still rather cool up there, you know, this time of year. I mean, I've lived in North Carolina and I've seen it in this time of year, you know, this time frame of the year, and it gets pretty cold there. So, you know, with those lower temperatures, not saying that tornadoes couldn't happen in that kind of environment, but it just doesn't seem like it's a real huge possibility today. It just seems like the everything's going to stay relatively sub-severe up there, not really showing anything in the way of a lot of instability in these areas of South Carolina and North Carolina. A lot of rain attributed with this, possibly some lightning threats. Hail, not really. And wind, you could have some wind in these areas. It could get very windy today because it does look like the wind shear is definitely there in South Carolina and North Carolina today. Alright, so damaging wind possible. I think it's unlikely to get to those really damaging levels, but it could be a windy day with all this. Alright, so definitely be mindful of that. But Florida, you guys are taking kind of the blunt force, unfortunately, of the severe weather today with these lines of storms that are coming through your area here, where it's just kind of a repetitive process of cell building going on along this line as it continues southward. It seems like the wind profile at this time is starting to die down a little bit, but you still got plenty enough wind shear. We're looking at the 00Z hour going into the next frame. This would be going into the overnight periods where that threat kind of continues, while going into the later evening hours and the overnight period. And then tomorrow morning, still have a couple of the cells that are going to be popping through. I mean, like I said, this is a low-end threat for tornadoes, but it isn't a zero threat either. You know, so, I mean, we're still getting over 2,000 joules of CAPE per kilometer in this area here. Very low LCL. Pretty nice wind shear that's definitely sufficient for some supercell development. Got a nice break in the caps, increase in heat and moisture. Pretty, you know, not bad. Not a bad hydrograph. Not very strong, but not very bad either. You know what I mean? The hydrograph is not humongously promising, but it doesn't look bad for the storm development. So, and then you get all these little isolated cells popping up, and you know, it just continues at that point. Low-end tornado threat, supercell development, still over 1,600 in CAPE. Some hail development as well through this. Alright, so that's pretty much going to be the case from northern Florida all the way down to the tip of Florida until it moves off into the Atlantic Ocean. So throughout the day into tomorrow morning, this is going to be kind of a lingering threat through Florida. So you're going to have to be on your guard and be weather aware all the way through today into tomorrow morning with all these isolated cells, just to make sure you know what's going on. Like I said, it's a low-end tornado threat, but it isn't zero. You might not get any tornadoes at all. You know what I mean? And that would be a good day. If we got no tornadoes at all, that would be a good day. But I think that the possibility is there for 1 or 2 tornadoes throughout the day. So definitely anywhere in Florida in these areas, be on your guard, be weather aware, be ready to take your family into a safe place, get shelter if need be. Lightning's going to be attributed with this. High wind, damaging wind, possibly a lot of rainfall. I'm sure that where the ground is very low to sea level in some parts of Florida, and you know what I'm talking about. You could have some flooding with this as well. That's definitely a threat. So make sure that you have everything ready and prepared for this as it comes through, so you don't have to you don't have to suffer in the aftermath. You kind of prepare for this. You know what I mean? So I know that you guys are kind of used to this kind of thing. You get weather like this all the time, but this is just a forewarning. Be prepared for some of the weather today. And so that's looking at today for the severe profiles. I hope that everybody stays safe today. I wish everybody luck. I hope nobody's injured or anything like that. And be weather aware, listen to your warnings, make sure you're listening to your local weather stations. Just follow what they put out, and I hope everybody makes it, okay throughout the day. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.